All right. Welcome, everyone. Sarah, you can see me? Marla, you can see me?
I sure
Perfect.
can.
So we're just letting people into the room. I just wanted to, first of all, just give a little bit of an introduction into our clinic, some of the services we offer. And today is really just a conversation. It's really about learning more about betrayal trauma, the effects, how one can move forward from betrayal trauma, which is something we're increasingly seeing in the clinic. So I really hope this is informative. I hope it's helpful for some people today. I will say this is not group therapy. It's not, to replace therapy. It's really just to kind of get the ball rolling on a little bit more about what it looks like and what it sounds like. But it doesn't replace therapy. So if you are suffering from betrayal trauma, please speak to a licensed therapist in your area or reach out to us. Okay. My name is Adam Jelinas. I'm the founder of First Step Men's Therapy. We are operating across the province of Ontario, and now we're actually moving outwards. So we are operating in a lot of other provinces across Canada. You can learn more about that on our website, but I just wanted to put that out there that we offer services in person in Ottawa, in person in Toronto coming up, and also virtually across much of Canada. So when I started the clinic a few years ago, I was working mostly with sex and porn addiction, and I noticed a lot of the people that were coming in were female partners looking for support. They had been betrayed by a loved one, and I noticed that there was a huge need for this and a huge lack of available resources and support. And I brought on two of our lovely associates here today who've really been helpful in supporting a lot of partners in the clinic. So while our clinic is geared towards men, we see quite a lot of female partners and male partners who've been betrayed by someone come in and get support. So without further ado, I'm going to throw it over to my colleagues. If there's questions you have, please put them in the chat. We'll address them towards the end of the webinar. But we'll start just with a quick introduction from Sarah and then Morella, just a bit about yourself, and then we'll get started with some of the topics, okay? So Sarah, you want to go first?
Thank you, Adam. Yes, so I have been helping people with living with addictions, as well as betrayed partners, and also working with couples. I often encourage people who come into the clinic to do the individual work first, and then at some point to do the couples work to help with the healing process. I do a lot of work with trauma, PTSD, and I work in other areas as well.
Thanks, Sarah. Morella?
Hi, I'm Morella Kovacevic-Smith, and I am a registered social worker and psychotherapist, and very similar to Sarah, I do a lot of trauma work. And at the foundation of it, I'm a trauma therapist, and I do a lot of work in the area of sexually addictive and compulsive behavior. So I also work with the acting out partners, the couples, and the betrayed partners, and been doing this work for about 6 years.
Awesome. Thanks, Marilla. Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify or just announce we have a team of clinicians on our staff who are trained under the CSAT model, Certified Sex Addiction Therapist model. And part of that model is really a lot of emphasis and training on betrayal trauma and how to help individuals and couples move forward in the healing process from sexual betrayal, but I guess it could be betrayal in general. I had never actually, I was talking to Morella just before we got started today, and I had actually never heard of this term until I became a therapist. And so, for me, it was part of it was just learning more about it. And so maybe my first question to the panel, to both of you, is what is betrayal trauma? How do I know I have betrayal trauma? And, kind of what are some situations or events that can lead to betrayal trauma? Let's start with Sarah, and then we'll go to Morella.
So when clients come and they're really struggling with symptoms like anxiety, I always say it's like it could be PTSD symptoms that would indicate that there's likely PTSD, depression. They might have trouble with sleep, Feeling very hypervigilant can also be another symptom. I would say that betrayal trauma is real trauma. It's called that for a reason, and it can really affect you in so many ways. I know a lot of people, they lose a lot of weight, they're unable to eat, they're unable to function. Sometimes people have to take time off work. So it can be very debilitating. And I encourage people to seek help from a therapist who can help them with it.
Marilla?
Yeah, I'd say that betrayal trauma is not what happens to us, but it's the emotional fallout of a violation of trust or well-being from someone that's close to us. So someone that we are in intimate relationship with. And essentially what betrayal trauma does is shatter safety. So everything you thought you knew about your partner, your relationship, yourself, the world is suddenly in question because whatever's happened has just really shaken your sense of safety to the core. And clients are often trying desperately to rewrite the narrative of their life in light of whatever they've discovered.
Yeah, some great points there. I noticed, when I started seeing male clients and they had, just been discovered, a lot of my work at the start was just educating them on some of the effects of betrayal trauma, whether it be some of the things Sarah and Morella mentioned. Um, I think obviously when you look at betrayal trauma, it's a different treatment process, but also it looks different in sort of the moving forward from somebody who has betrayed versus somebody who's been betrayed. And that's one of the things. Often partners suffer more, obviously, because they're the ones that have been hurt the most. And so their recovery process takes a lot longer from what I've seen in the past. One of the things I was curious about from both of you is, let's say you're working with a betrayed partner. The first session, they come in, they've just found out about something. Maybe it's been, infidelity or some other form of betrayal. It could be financial betrayal, emotional betrayal. What's your sort of first sort of step or process look like with somebody who's there for the first session with you? What's the sort of things that you sort of try to look at or help them with in the first, let's say, first session or two? Maybe Marilla, you want to start with that one?
Sure. I think that in my experience, a really important piece is validation because the clients are coming in just overwhelmed. So like Sarah said, they could be hyper vigilant or in what we call detective mode, right? So now they're constantly checking their partner's phone and they're asking questions about, every little thing. And, 1 minute they might think, get out of the house. I don't want to see you anymore. And the next minute they're craving their partner to kind of wrap them in their arms and tell them that they love them. And it can be crazy making. It can feel like, you don't really know what's going on. Your emotions are all out of whack. Maybe you're a lot angrier than you used to be. And so validating all of these feelings and everything that's going on for them, and to let them know, yeah, this is not unusual for a partner who's been betrayed. That all of this, that you're going through, numbers of other betrayed partners have experienced the very same thing. And so it can often really help them to feel like, okay, at least somebody understands me. At least I'm quote unquote normal. And so that can be really helpful in just helping them to understand what's going on for them.
Just to echo Marilla, the validation is huge because it's a very lonely place to be a betrayed partner. There's a lot of shame that often comes with it. And a lot of betrayed partners, they don't want to share with anyone that they know. They don't want to tell their friends. They don't want to tell their family. There's so much even fear and anxiety around it. The other thing that I like to do is provide a lot of psychoeducation about what this trauma does to the body, mentally, physically. And I think of it as grief. I always share that it's, you're grieving the relationship that you thought you had, and even grieving the relationship that you thought you were going to have. So I think that's also a big piece.
Yeah, can both of you touch on this theme of trauma and individuals who have been betrayed in the past? Sort of, let's say as a child or maybe in a previous relationship. How does that sort of look as it relates to like a current betrayal? I mean, is there sort of is there fallout from those past events, maybe re-traumatization? Can you maybe both speak on that a little bit? I think that's an important piece that might be helpful. Maybe Morella, if you want to go first.
Yeah, if there's a history of trauma, then this absolutely can re-trigger, and it becomes another layer of trauma, and it can impede recovery, and it can make things a little more difficult, because now we're not just dealing with the impact of what the current behaviors are, but we are also dealing with a whole history of trauma and betrayal. And so sometimes it takes some time to dig underneath and understand, what's going on for them, and are the feelings and things that they're experiencing related to what's going on now, or is there a historical component as well?
Yeah, no, exactly, Marilla. That's a good point. I think a lot of times people who grew up in a household where there was a parent with an addiction will often find themselves in a relationship as an adult with a partner who has eight or multiple addictions. So trying to unpack that, get a really good history, childhood history, previous relationship history, and seeing if there's a pattern that might have led them to where they are now, and being able to help them process all of that trauma.
Yeah, great points, both of you. For those of you just trying to see a few more people joining our webinar, today's just sort of a real, hopefully a helpful conversation around betrayal trauma, some of the effects, what it looks like moving forward from betrayal trauma. Please place your questions in the chat if you have any questions. Again, this is not a group therapy session. It doesn't replace therapy, but if you are looking for some support, reach out to us or another professional in your area. One of the things also I find I notice a lot of, and maybe you guys can speak on it, is clients who are very angry about coming to therapy because of something that maybe wasn't caused by them, or it's obviously not something that they did intentionally or unintentionally. And so they're almost coming to therapy for something that um, isn't really, they're really not necessarily wanting to come to therapy for. Can you maybe speak a little bit about on some of the experiences you've had? How can, maybe clients who are in that state where, obviously they're really in hurting and in pain, but coming to therapy because of an event that maybe isn't obviously caused by them. Maybe Sarah, if you want to start with that part.
I think with the betrayal trauma, there's usually a lot of anger that shows up anyway, and again, that cycle of emotions that comes like with grief. There's so many pieces when people come in with those strong emotions, like you said, the anger that might be caused by someone else's actions and behaviors. Again, I think it's providing a safe space, providing that psychoeducation, encouraging them to try to open up and understand what's going on in their relationship, and maybe in their past as well. Maybe there are other layers of anger from the past. And then often people, once they feel safe, and they feel that they, safe in terms of this is a space where they can talk about the betrayal and they can talk about their feelings, that they learn more about themselves as well, not just about their partner, because it can be very helpful to teach them about addiction, especially sex and porn addiction. And I think that helps process some of those strong feelings like anger.
Yeah, there can be a lot of resentment when the betrayed partner is wondering, why do they have to come to therapy? Why do they have to do all this work? Why do they have to dig up their past when they're not the ones with the problem? And I'll always say to them, they may not be the ones with the problem, but the problem has affected them. And now, regardless, their life will never be the same. And particularly for couples who want to stay together, the way I explain it is that the acting out partner, their job in the equation, their function is to address their behaviors and their issues, and also to begin to build the bridge towards the betrayed partner to help repair the relationship. The betrayed partner's job in the equation, or the function in the equation, is to ensure that the impact of those acting out behaviors don't affect them in a way that's going to prevent the healing of the relationship. So when I say that often, there's the anger that comes. There's a lack of trust. There's a lot of things that happen in the betrayed partner, and it's important, if they want their relationship to heal, that they have to ensure that the impact of that betrayal is not going to prevent the healing. So their anger, their lack of trust, these things, they need to be addressed, whether they stay with their partner or not. Because if they aren't addressed, it's going to follow them into their next relationship.
And I mean, both of you have really, done a great job working with a lot of trade partners that have come into the clinic. And I'm wondering, based on maybe your own experiences, are there sort of clients, maybe you can even sort of sift out who are the ones that typically lead to better outcomes? Like, are there certain clients that when they do X, Y, or Z, or when they're maybe exploring A, B, and C, they tend to see greater results, or maybe lowering that sort of impact of betrayal trauma than maybe somebody who kind of stays in that, sort of system or cycle where it's hard for them to get out of that sort of period of their life? Maybe based off of some of the work you both have done, are there certain things that you notice, sort of like a recipe for those people that are maybe struggling more versus maybe having a little bit more of a better outcome in terms of treatment? Maybe Morella, if you want to start with that one.
Yeah, that's a really hard question because every client is different. But certainly if their partner has committed to the recovery process and they are doing their own work, that is a really big factor. Now that's out of their control because they can't make their partner commit to recovery. But I find that when I work with clients, if I can help them clarify, what do they really want moving forward? How do they take control back of their life? How do we empower them so that they don't feel like their life and happiness and peace is dependent on their partner? Then I find that clients tend to do a bit better. So when we talk about, okay, what's the bottom line? What would be the thing that makes you throw in the towel and say, okay, this is not working anymore? Once they define that, even if they never get there, even if they never follow through, but once it's defined in their mind, then they know, okay, so if this happens, this will be the outcome. And that can be really helpful for them to define boundaries and what it is that they really want moving forward.
Great, Sarah.
Yeah, I think empowerment is a great word, Morella, because that really is helpful for that healing. Because I always say, no matter what, whether you stay or you leave, that it's about you and what do you want your life to look like, right? And how do you want that to be? So the self-care, finding support. I encourage peer support, going to meetings like S&On meetings. There are a lot of resources out there. There are books, there are workbooks, there are podcasts. So doing the work for themselves, I think, is really huge. Because like Marla said, we can't control other people. We can support and we can encourage and be there for them, but it's really what we do for ourselves that is most important.
Yeah, that's some great points there. There is this sort of three-legged stool I think they use in our CSAP model, with obviously the individual betrayed partner, person who's been betraying their own partner, and the couple getting support. And I'm curious for all three of you, or for both of you, do you find that couples tend to do couples work too early on in the process? When would you typically recommend that a couple, if they want to move forward, seek couples therapy in sort of tandem with individual therapy? Maybe Sarah, if you want to go first with that one.
Yeah, for me, I always encourage it a little bit later on. I think the individual work really needs to happen for both the betrayed partner and for the individual living with the addiction. Until the sex or porn addict has reached some a decent period of time of sobriety. I think being in active recovery, I think that's huge, and that they're doing the homework, and that the betrayed partner is working on their piece as well. Then it's a good time to come together when they're both feeling like they're in a better place, but there's still some things that they need some outside help from a couples therapist. I think that's kind of the point. But if it's too early on, and especially the person living with the addiction hasn't done the deep dive into why, and they're not feeling good about their recovery yet, then I think it's too soon.
Marla?
Yeah, I often find that a knee-jerk reaction for couples is we have to go to couple therapy. And I'll always tell them, just like Sarah talked about, there needs to be some sort of stability and some sort of significant sobriety in order for couples therapy to be really effective if you're going to build trust and start to rebuild the relationship. So that can't happen. I don't believe it can happen without a full disclosure and without a significant level of sobriety, because if there are constant relapses, then the betrayed partner is just being traumatized over and over again. So I do have couples who really want to do couple therapy right away. And so I'll say to them, okay, what we can work on is how to improve your communication, because this process, you're going to have to do a lot of communicating and it's going to be really hard. So we can talk about your communication. We can talk about what behavioral patterns you have and how you got here, but we cannot begin rebuilding trust and rebuilding the relationship until there's that full disclosure and sobriety established. And then for the betrayed partner, some sort of emotional.
Oh, did we lose Marla? Okay, I think we lost Marla there for a second. We'll have to circle back to her in a second. So we've had a few questions come up. Maybe we can just address them. One question is regarding couples counseling, so that might be helpful here. In the case of couples therapy, do the individual therapists and couples therapists work collaboratively to set up a plan or roadmap? If so, can you speak to what this looks like? Sarah, maybe you can tackle that one while we get Marilla back. Did you want to answer that one quickly?
Yeah, we can definitely collaborate once everyone has agreed to consent to share information and to collaborate as a team. I know that the three of us have done that before. it can be helpful, and there are different ways of doing it, and you can definitely talk to any of us about that if anyone is more curious about that. Marla, I'm not sure if there's anything else you want to share about that.
I missed that question. I don't know what happened to my to my internet connection, so not really sure where we are right now.
We were just, sorry, Marilla, we were just talking about a question that came up around couples therapy, whether the individual therapist and that couples therapist work sort of in conjunction with or collaboratively to set up sort of a roadmap or treatment plan, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I highly encourage collaboration because I always say I want to make sure that all of the therapists that have their finger in the pie, we're all rowing in the same direction, so that, you know, when you come to couple therapy, you're going to get the same messaging or similar messaging as when you're in individual therapy, so that we don't have, you know, people going to individual and couple therapy and getting mixed messages. That just confuses everyone and everything. So we just want to make sure that everyone's moving in the same direction.
Yeah, I think it can be confusing sometimes if it's too early on and maybe the couple's not ready yet. Maybe there's the wounds are still really raw. Maybe there's a lot of, you know, sort of turmoil or another thing we often see is the sort of betraying partner really struggling with sobriety, recovery, and doing their own internal work. And so it really takes, I think, you know, an individual, the individuals in a coupleship to really have done a little bit of the work on their own before maybe bringing in a couples therapist to work on things like communication or boundaries, some of those other things that might be important as a couple to work on. The other question we got was regarding the concept of prodependence. So prodependence versus what people might sort of call in the past, we heard of codependency. So Sarah and Morella, maybe you can just touch a little bit on this topic. Have you heard of the topic of prodependence? Is that something you're familiar with, Sarah or Morella?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I hadn't heard of it until I saw it in the chat. So Sarah, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Honestly, this is a new a new word for me as well. But from what I gather, I'll just touch on it briefly. I think I'm guessing that the prodependence, I'll have to look more into this, is more about a healthier way of looking at an attachment within a relationship versus being codependent, which is very unhealthy.
Yeah, yeah, I've heard this term come up through Dr. Rob Weiss, who's sort of one of the pioneers of the sex addiction model. He was the one who worked alongside Dr. Patrick Carnes in formulating a lot of the material. He's written a lot of books on it. He actually wrote a book called Prodependence, which is sort of a different way, a newer way of looking at sort of the relationship, the impact of someone's behavior on a partner, usually with addiction, but it could be, you know, in other ways too. The codependency was typically seen as sort of a pathologizing way to look at a partner's behavior. And so a lot of the times when a partner is really showing a lot of care or concern, or maybe is focused on the needs of their trade or betraying partner, the codependency model is like that person needs to detach. And so the prodependence model is more around looking at a way for that person to show love and care and concern without it being seen as there's something wrong with that person for feeling that way. So it is seen a little bit more as empathetic model, natural healthy desire to want to care for somebody, you know, but not seeing it as like that person needs to go to therapy because they're codependent, which I think can be really pathologizing. And it just goes against kind of human nature to be concerned about somebody, even somebody who's hurt us, right? So, you know, I think there is a shift. But Dr. Rob Weiss has written this great book on it called Prodependence, and it's really helpful for some partners to see it that way. We're going to talk a little bit about disclosure. As part of the CSAT model, which a few of us are trained in the clinic, this is a really important process for many couples. I think a lot of couples don't go through this, and they really, really miss out on one crucial step in healing, in moving forward, in sort of helping to rebuild trust. And so I think as a CSAT trained clinician, it's a really, really important piece of the model, but it's also something that a lot of people don't know of. And so I was hoping that maybe today we could just talk a little bit about this. What does the disclosure process look like? Why is it important for couples to go through it? What does it look like once you're in it? And so maybe I'll just throw it over to the panel first around what is formal disclosure? What is the disclosure process as a whole? And why is it important for couples who are going through betrayal trauma and the aftermath of it to go through it? So maybe we'll start with Morella if you want to start.
Oh, I have so much that I could say about full disclosure, but a quick synopsis of what full disclosure looks like. I consider it a 4-step process. So the first step is the betrayed partner defines all the questions that they still have that they want to ask their partner, but these are factual questions. So it's the who, what, where, when, how, not the why, because that comes a little bit potentially later in the process, but we're looking for facts here. So then the betraying partner, the acting out partner, formulates their disclosure where they are as accurate as possible about their acting out behaviors and the history of their acting out behaviors. That is then presented to the betraying partner in a therapeutically supported process. So therapists are there. The betraying partner reads their disclosure so they don't forget anything. Then we have the impact statement. So the betraying partner has the opportunity then to write an impact statement to really outline what the impact has been on their life, physically, emotionally, sexually, spiritually, financially, all of those areas. And then finally, there's the amends process or the amends letter. So then the betraying partner has the opportunity to acknowledge all the pain and difficulty that's come from their behaviors and express their commitment to their family, their partner, their recovery. So that's it in a nutshell. Why is it important? I get a lot of clients who say to me, I already know everything, so I don't know what a disclosure would do. And here's the problem with that, is that they've often received what we call drip disclosures. So a little piece of information here, a little piece of information there, or maybe it all came tumbling out in one word vomit session and they were caught off guard. So the first thing is, in those either drip disclosures or the word vomit disclosures, both participants, the acting out partner and the betrayed partner, are often in a protective state. So when I say that, what does that look like? The betrayed partner may have been totally caught off guard. And so they're in fight, flight, or freeze. And when you're in a trauma response, you can't take in all that information. It's just your brain has gone offline. So even though you may have heard everything, you may not be processing everything. For the betraying partner, they're often in minimizing mode, right? So they're often going to try to make it seem less worse to either protect themselves or to protect their partner because they don't want their partner to be more hurt, when the entire truth comes out. So doing the disclosure therapeutically supported allows everyone to be in a space where they're not in their trauma response, where they're in a place where they can process the information. They can hear it, they can be supported, they can process it. And also, you have to have everything out on the table. You wouldn't take a job without knowing what the pay was, the hours, or the location. Like you wouldn't take a job without all the information. So how can we expect partners, betrayed partners, to decide if they're going to stay in the relationship or leave the relationship if they don't have all the information? That's what it really comes down to. So it's a time where the betraying partner, the acting out partner, can take responsibility and accountability for what has happened. and the betrayed partner then has all the information and they can make an informed decision about where they go from there. So that was a lot of words. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Sarah.
No, that was a perfect way to summarize it. And you're right, a lot of people say, no, but I already know everything. I think that's a common statement. And I always warn that it's like drinking out of a fire hose when you sit through a disclosure. But I think it really is important for some healing, some forward momentum in the relationship. I also think for the acting out partner, it's really important to sit down and write out everything that has happened and all the things that you've done and how you've hurt your partner, because I think that's also very healing. So not only are you helping your partner heal, but you're helping yourself heal, really understanding what has happened, because sometimes there's a lot of money that's been spent. There are a lot of things that have happened over time, maybe prior to this partner, and maybe it's been happening for decades. So sometimes, I mean, even with, when I encourage a client to journal, get things out of your head, put it down on paper. It can be very helpful, right? But for the betrayed partner, the impact letter is also very important for healing, and to be able to respond to that in a safe place with your therapist. And yeah, I encourage everyone to go through that process. I think it is important.
Sorry, can I say a few more things, Adam? The disclosure or discovery process is a really interesting point in time, because often the acting out partner feels this huge sense of relief. They don't have to keep stories or secrets anymore. They can now move full steam ahead into their recovery, and they, as horrible as it is, can feel pretty good about things coming out. For the betrayed partner, it's often the first time they're hearing something. And so they're trying to rewrite the narrative of their history. They're looking back now, while the acting out partner is looking forward to healing. The betrayed partner is looking back going, I have to rewrite my whole relationship because it was not what I thought it was. And so I'll often say that when we get that information, it's like getting chapters of a book, but it's all out of order. And so the betrayed partner is trying to put all those chapters in order and make sense of the story. And that takes up a lot of energy. And so the disclosure just does that for them. It packages it up nicely with the beginning, middle, and end. And now they can also move forward into healing without like looking back, trying to rewrite their story.
Yeah, and I was mentioning before we jumped on today with our panelists that a lot of couples, I mean, I've done a bunch of disclosures, and uh, some of them have done disclosures in the past and have mentioned that they've really just only done the formal disclosure, which is the first step. It's writing out all of the sort of behaviors that someone's done previously to the relationship and in the relationship. And to me, that's a little bit like ripping off the Band-Aid and letting the wound open up, but there's no healing, there's no remedy for that sort of wound. And so the impact letter and the emotional restitution process, it's really a 3-step process. And if you're just doing one step, it's really not going to be helpful in the long run, because the goal is to rebuild trust. And so, in my opinion, you really have to do steps 2 and 3 as well, and a lot of other work in the meantime. I mean, it's not just doing 3 steps and you're done. Trust takes years and years and years to build, and minutes and seconds to fall down, right? And so it's really important that these are processes, but they're not ultimately the only solutions to healing from betrayal trauma. What are some other? I mean, we've heard the term therapeutic separation. I know that's a lot of couples go through maybe a period of time where they sort of separate, they do their own work. Have you had any clients or have you had any sort of experiences where you found that helpful for clients to go through a formal therapeutic separation? Maybe we can just touch on that a little bit. Is that something that you would sort of recommend to some? Which couples would you recommend that to, I guess? Marilla or Sarah, any thoughts there?
I think therapeutic separation is a great idea. What I often run into is the logistics of it. So, in theory, the therapeutic separation is a separation where the goal is to work on individual healing and to not like take divorce off the table for a little while. So whether that's 6 months or a year, or however long, to give everyone time to really dig into their healing and define what it is that they want moving forward. When you have a family and a mortgage and kids, and particularly in our kind of economic um, state that the country's in right now, it's really hard for someone to move out and get another place to stay. So a therapeutic separation can be done in-house with very, very clear boundaries. So I have worked with some couples on defining boundaries for an in-house therapeutic separation, simply because, like I said, logistically, it's really, really difficult um, for someone to leave, particularly if they're kids, and you need that second pair of hands to parent and all of those kinds of things. But I don't know, Sarah, have you had some therapeutic separation clients?
Yeah, I've had a few, and like you said, there's the reality of it. It can be challenging, but the boundary setting is huge. And really respecting each other's boundaries, and communication is the other piece. So if things need to happen or change because maybe those boundaries need to shift, or something happens with the kid, things happen in life, to be able to communicate respectfully and really hear each other. I think that's a big one.
Yeah, I've often recommended it to couples where they're sort of stuck in that cycle where it's just really chaotic. There's a lot of tension, difficulty even communicating. I found that that can be helpful just to kind of give both parties a bit of a space to breathe and to do their own work. Because it can be very hard when you're in that chaos to do your own work when you're kind of sort of stuck in the middle of it, right? But I hear you, like it's really hard with so many different factors involved. But I think the idea of boundaries and communication and sort of, I think with the therapeutic separation, at least there's sort of a timetable of like, when are we going to reevaluate this? What does it look like in the interim? What we're going to do with A, B, and C, and X, Y, and Z, that sort of thing. Um, one of the other things, I mean, in terms of rebuilding trust, right? That's a huge part of this. And we've talked about formal disclosure. We've talked about, you know, um, couples therapy, that kind of thing. I guess in terms of rebuilding trust, what would you recommend to like a couple that's maybe done some work, they've done maybe the disclosure process? How can they slowly start to rebuild that trust? What sort of steps could they take? What would you sort of recommend to a client who's really looking to continue on that theme of rebuilding trust? Maybe it's with the sort of acting out partner, the partner who's betrayed. Maybe as a couple. What sort of steps would you recommend, or what do you recommend usually to couples that are in that state? Marla, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Um, that's a tough one because there's no magic switch. There's no one event that's going to repair the trust. So I talk about micro moments of safety. So you have to have safety in order to rebuild trust. And what that looks like is that the acting out partner shows up consistently. You say you're going to be somewhere, be there. You say you're going to do something, do it. Um, and show that you are trustworthy in the small things, and that will eventually build to trusting in the bigger things. For the betrayed partner, they have to be in a place where they're open and willing to notice the changes and to acknowledge that things might be different, because once bitten twice shy, and so it's hard to step into trust when you have been betrayed so deeply. So part of their work is to find themselves in a place where they're open to the possibility of trusting again and noticing the work that their partner's doing.
Yeah, betrayed partners, they're waiting for the ball to drop. When is he gonna act out again? When are things gonna happen again? When is he gonna lie to me? So the trust building takes a long time, and that's the other thing that I share with clients, is that it doesn't happen overnight. There's no timeline. When, you know, in our CSAT training, we talk about 2 to 3 years, right, for betrayed partners to trust again. Which is also why we encourage people not to make big life decisions in the first year, right? Because it does take time. And it's also show, don't tell. So like Morella was saying, you know, the betrayed partner seeing that the acting out partner is doing the work. You know, are they helping more with the kids? Are you going for date nights? Are you communicating better? You know, so I think it's a combination of things that help rebuild that trust.
Yeah, great points. I think it's really important. One of the things that I think maybe another theme around this is um, how to, because there's a lot of hypervigilance, right? You've touched on hypervigilance, lack of safety, and so creating those small moments to rebuild that safety and that trust, and to sort of bring down the level of threat, right? Because that threat could appear when you're going to the grocery store, or when your partner's out of town, right? There's a lot of different moments where that can come up, right? So I think it's really important to there's been different ways that I know clients have had filters on their phones. They've had accountability tools, right? They've had a lot of sort of check-ins with their partners during the day. But you're right, like it is a form of PTSD. It's much like going to combat, right? There's a lot of the similarities between PTSD from war veterans and partners, right? Which, on the surface of it might seem kind of hard to really kind of fathom, but the way the brain processes trauma, betrayal trauma versus other forms of trauma, it's the same thing, right? And so there's this level of hypervigilance, which leads me to my last question around self-care. Also, we're almost closing in on the hour here. So if there's any other questions before we go, please feel free to put them in the chat. But around the theme of self-care, with partners, a lot of partners who are sort of in the thick of it, I think self-care is a big struggle for them. And maybe you can just touch on what are some of the things that you notice about partners who are suffering from betrayal trauma, and the theme of self-care. What might be helpful? What are some of the typical challenges with self-care? Maybe Sarah, we'll start with you this time.
Yeah, self-care is huge, especially with any kind of trauma, because you need to do things for yourself. You need to regulate your nervous system. You need to have breaks from always being in this worry and this panic and the stress of life. So I always encourage, I also used to be a personal trainer, so I always encourage moving the body, get out for your walks, go and do some sort of form of movement. Connect with people you feel safe with, go have coffee with a friend or go visit family. But definitely taking time for yourself 100%. And I always encourage journaling and doing things that that bring you comfort. That's really huge, even if it's a small period of time every day, but just something that you can carve out in your day.
Yeah, and if there's been a history of a dysfunctional relationship, oftentimes the betrayed partner has spent years kind of picking up the slack and trying really hard to please their partner and make the relationship healthy. So they've put in a lot of work, and so the self-care is really important for, like Sarah said, it's important to have times where our nervous system can just relax, where we're not in that trauma response, fight, flight, or freeze. The only way that we're going to be able to heal from trauma is to remind our nervous system it can relax. It doesn't have to be hypervigilant. It's important to do things that fill our soul, that make us feel whole, that rejuvenate us and energize us. And often those are the things that get put off to the side when we're trying to somehow fix or maintain this relationship that we know something is off in. And so part of that becomes the empowerment, right? What do I want? What do I need? What do I need right now in order to move forward? What do I want to do? Me, not me as someone's partner or me as someone's parent, or just me. What brings me life? And so it can help with the nervous system, but it also can help with the empowerment to define what it is that that is self-care, and how do you step into that.
We had another question come in, so we'll answer that question, and then we'll kind of talk a little bit about Morella's group and the importance of group in helping betrayed partners. The question that came in was around sort of a little off topic from betrayal trauma, but it's related to it. The acting out partner. Can therapy for someone who is resistant to maybe accepting that label of sex addiction still be successful? We see that a lot, right? About labels, am I a sex addict? That sort of thing. I'm just curious, and based on the question, clients that may be resistant to getting help for sex addiction, can it still be sort of successful for them? Or is that just sort of rooted in the maybe denial or some other way of minimizing things? Sarah, did you want to go?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I would, from my experience and my point of view, is that if you're still in denial, then you're not there yet in terms of recovery and healing. And that is very challenging for a betrayed partner to be in that place.
Well, anything to add?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. As psychotherapists and social workers, we don't diagnose. So we use, sex addict and stuff, not in a diagnostic way, but really, I think just to simplify the conversation. But I'll always say to my clients, I don't care what we call it. I generally talk about compulsive and addictive behaviors as opposed to saying, you know, the sex addict, and that can help people feel a little bit better. But the what we call it is not the issue. What we're looking at is what's the problem? What's the problem and how do we solve that problem? Call it whatever you want. But we need to be honest and open about what's going on, what the problems are, and how do we address that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I try to avoid those labels nowadays, and really just call it what it is. And it's problematic sexual behavior, out of control behavior, you know, lies, deceit, secrets, compartmentalizing behavior, that sort of thing. I think that, whichever way you want to call it, I think as long as it sort of signifies what the real issue is, I think that's usually the most helpful. In terms of group therapy, Morella is going to be running a group. So if you're watching today, it's going to be upcoming. You might be watching this later on down the road. Morella is going to be starting some partners groups for those suffering and struggling with betrayal trauma coming up in September. You can check out our website and some of our marketing materials for more information that's going to be upcoming. But just as a quick sort of last question, why is it important, or is it important for partners to sort of have a group component to healing? Maybe we'll throw that over to Marilla first. Why would a partner want to be in a group with other people struggling with similar things? Why would that be helpful?
One of the big benefits is community. So Sarah mentioned earlier on that betrayal can be very isolating. And so we get sort of caught up in our own world, and we don't know what's normal, what's right, there's a lot of questions around it. So joining a group where you hear other people's stories and other people's experiences can be really validating. Okay, I'm not the only one going through this. I'm not the only one feeling this. We also, because it's going to be a rolling group where people can kind of join in whenever it's convenient for them, there are going to be people who are further along in their healing journey. And so we can learn a lot from their experience. We can learn a lot from, what they've gone through and how they've managed. but also a big component of healing that we don't often talk about, but shows up in a lot of 12-step groups like AA or SA or NA, is this idea of helping other people along in their journey. So once we're farther along in our journey, then we can help mentor other people, or speak into the lives of other people who are just newly coming into this. And so that can also be a big component of our own healing. So absolutely, I think groups are a great idea. One of the things that I often hear, though, from betrayed partners is that it just ends up being a bitching session about how horrible their husbands are, or they hear, things that are far too traumatic and triggering. And so we're going to really work on keeping it focused and positive, and ensuring that people are being benefited by the group.
Sorry, anything else to add?
Yeah, I encourage groups for either acting out partners, betrayed partners. I think it's so important to feel a sense of community, to feel like you're not alone, to get that support outside of your individual therapy. So I'm a big proponent of it. I think it's very, very helpful and supportive.
Great. Yeah. I think it's really important to have, like Marilla said, community. A lot of people, they're really dealing with it on their own, and like I'm the only one going through this right now, right? And so I think it's really important to have this sort of community, this tribe that can help you understand yourself better, feel like you're not alone, have that sense of connection in a place where it really feels disconnecting, right? I'm going to leave the link to the workbook that Marilla is going to be using. And I know Sarah and Marilla have probably used this as well in their sessions. It's called Facing Heartbreak. I'll leave the link here if I can. It's a very long link. Hopefully that connects to the workbook. As I said, thank you so much for everyone who was able to make it out today. I really appreciate all of you being here. It's a really important topic. If you need more information, if you'd like some more information on the group or our services in general, you can visit our website. We also have some blog posts on betrayal trauma, some resources, some books, some support groups. So really wanting to sort of emphasize the impact and the importance of getting support, not only if you're the partner who's been struggling with sexual behavior, but those that are impacted by it. So I want to thank everyone for today. For those of you that are watching later down the road, thanks again as well. And Morella and Sarah, obviously, thank you so much for your time. Hope all of you have a great rest of your day and week, and have a great, uh, um, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Okay, thanks a lot, and bye for now.